Hello, welcome back to another typology related video. As an INTP, I'm going to be discussing my shadow functions for you. And my shadow functions, which essentially make up an ENTJ. And what I understand about this is that our shadow is supposed to be, I guess, like the part of ourselves that we suppress in a way, or like the part of ourselves that like we don't really want to confront. And I've been focused on that idea for like quite some time, so I thought, okay, I wanted to break that down for you guys and kind of, go along that process if anybody was, curious as to like how that might go about, at least for one INTP here in particular. So, without further ado, I'll just go ahead with that. So now I'm an INTP. The dominant function that I would lead with is introverted thinking. And my relationship with that to myself has always been about how the world is nothing more than what I think I know. The ideas and conclusions that I piece together, logically, rationally justify myself. Nothing in the world is, anything less or more than that. So life, to me, is just what I understand, or what I attempt to understand anyway. And the different thing about that, like in contrast to that, would come along TE, extroverted thinking. Now, this is a function that I guess admittedly do struggle with because, as you know, stereotypical INTPs don't really want to do shit because I guess we're just addicted to, the process of thinking itself. I've never really necessarily had a strong drive in my life to go ahead and do something, make results happen, as they say, because that's what TE is focused on, execution and, putting something into play as you categorize logically the real world. A lot of, let's say ENTJs or a lot of people with strong TE in general, they want to get things done. And I guess they scratch that itch when they, finally put whatever execution they thought of, into place. Now, for me, I don't really feel that. And I think, if I'm allowed to speak for any other INTPs that might agree, the reason why we kind of lag behind that is because we get kind of bored with the idea of actually having to do something, because kind of like what I said before about how, okay, everything is, more or less just what I think I know. So I can think of plans all day long. I can think about things that I would like to do. But the moment that it all pieces together and I find a way to make it make sense, the gratification honestly just immediately gets delayed. Cause okay, if I think of something and it's not even that I necessarily think that I'm incapable of doing things. Like, I'm sure if I really hypothetically were to put my mind to shit, I don't know, I could probably do stuff if I, wanted to. But it's like, okay, just the idea that I can do it, admittedly, is already sufficient for me to just, get over it. Because, I don't know, a lot of times in my life, I've, done stuff and I just thought to myself, okay, this is super fucking boring. I already know what to anticipate. I'm not a strong natural TE person that's okay, I will go there. I will bring myself to go there. I'm just I know what happens if I go there. So why do I care? This might be a dramatic comparison, and I'm not saying it's like how it is, but I'm I don't know, just to put it in perspective, it's okay, I don't need to get punched in the face. I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to hurt if I get punched in the face. So even if this thing is super awesome, or okay, it would be cool if I had this in my life, if I made it for myself, I'm just okay, so what? I pieced it together. Okay, whatever. And this brings me to another shadow function that I also naturally struggle with, and that would be NI, which is introverted intuition, because that's focusing on one specific conclusion. If I'm trying my best to explain it, I am not naturally an NI person, so if I'm butchering this for a lot of you, I apologize, but I'm okay, that's the point. I'm just trying my best to understand how I would go about this. And yes, naturally I'm going to struggle about talking about doing it, and even maybe perhaps explaining it as well. But okay, I am an extroverted intuition user first and foremost. So I have ambiguity all the time. And this kind of makes me lose a lot of like my inspiration in the world, to be honest, because it's like the world just seems so clouded with like ideas and stuff. And maybe, sure, a lot of things sound like they might be cool or like fun to do. Let's say maybe there'd be like an interesting project if I like, lean towards this. But it's like I can't live in a world where I can do so many things at once. And like in a way, that's what I hate. Because naturally, like, okay, a lot of us, like any users, we fall into analysis paralysis because, we consider like, so many variables at play. I'm like, I wish I could do things like all at once. Like if I had the capability of doing so, I would probably do so many things like, all at once. But we're limited in this like fleshly, like formed body that has its limitations and its fucking weaknesses and like all that shit. Like, I don't know. At least me, I think having any kind of makes me realize that a lot of people are like, trying to go too big for their britches when we're all just stupid, pointless, and like we're gonna die. But like, whatever. And okay. Leading up to that, I am somebody that uses SI. SI first and foremost before SE. And I don't mind sensory experiences, honestly, but they have to be ones that I've already like cataloged and like maintained, as far as I've, been able to like experience life. I notice certain patterns that I enjoy or that I like doing, that it's almost like I reflexively get in there when I'm just like, repeating that process. I don't really like SE because you don't know what to expect. Like a lot of times, like when I try to like do something that's like SE, it's like, oh, just, adapt, go with the flow, because SE is, present, not expecting more or less than whatever is like currently happening. And as somebody that has introverted thinking as like a not natural way of like being, that kind of makes me uncomfortable, because it's not like I can just accept my experience as it is. Like, bruh, a lot of times what I'm often doing is I'm thinking about whether I'm thinking correctly in the first place. So it kind of destroys my perception of just trying to be here in the here and now. And yeah, I naturally fall back to like SI as a way to like ground me into the world, because like if it's a, habit that I already know I like doing, then I can't mess it up. I can't not react in time, let's say, if it's already something that's like familiar and something that, I'm naturally used to. Now, okay, here's another thing. If I'm attempting to go out of my way to care about others' feelings, because I'll just be honest, I don't really care about other people's feelings a lot of times, that's primarily all that I'm going to be able to focus on. And I'm talking about this because I'm talking about how difficult of a struggle it already is for me to even use extroverted feeling. Just imagine like how much more it takes for me to try and like understand myself, because I'm so high with like introverted thinking, and I naturally take a more like detached point of view where it's like, okay, if I sort something out, why would I project something else? Why would I insert something where it doesn't really like, belong? Assuming that I can be at a point where my TI introverted thinking is satisfied, yes, I'll keep saying it. The world is nothing more and nothing less than that. Who cares about my personal feelings, to be honest? I don't care about your personal feelings, because if we already find the logical truth to something, the consistency of like how something can be in a way that's regardless of like how we personally feel about it, then I kind of just think of like all our feelings as just, okay, we're behaving as if like, I don't know, we're spoiled brats that essentially can't get our way. And that's what I personally think the weakness of like emotions, to be. Because, they require you they require you to be all like vulnerable and stuff like that. So I don't really see where feelings get you, to be honest. At least not naturally anyway. Like, okay, everybody keeps fronting about like, emotional intelligence and like whatnot, but I mean like fuck emotional intelligence. Low-key, I just find emotional intelligence to be manipulation. And that's why I kind of find FE like super gross as like my inferior, and as like, the feeling function that I like, naturally go towards, because, obviously people like you if they think that like you're one of them, you share their like, let's say, quote unquote, like values, and that's what FE naturally tries to emulate, assimilating with the group, or like being part of the your values within the atmosphere and whatnot. It has nothing to do with how you personally feel. And there isn't anything to something that I personally feel, because oftentimes I sit here in nothing, or I just sit here and silently judge everything, because kind of like what you'll always hear me say, this world is stupid and full of crap. But like, okay, other than that, if I'm not doing my best to sort out how I get along with other people in terms of like their feelings and where I'm supposed to connect, this and that, I don't have to ask myself how I personally feel about anything, because I know I've accepted that the world is typically indifferent to like a whole bunch of like, things. And when I use TI to just naturally sort and like, categorize everything into like a specific framework where like I can get it, I'll just toss it to the side, because like, who cares now? Unless it's somehow like relevant ever again in like a discussion, I don't need to pay too much attention to my details, honestly. Or at least, in terms of like how I even like piece things, because like one thing about me is I am always wondering how shit works, and revising and renewing, blah blah blah, this and this and that. And I'm not trying to insert myself there, despite the fact that that's also what I'm trying to do. So it's it's a weird state to be in, because as a human, people keep telling you you're supposed to like achieve and grow, or let's say be like something, like make yourself proud. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. Admittedly. I'm just doing things that I have to do in the world, simply just because, okay, maybe there's no other way around it. Like, let's say, trying to find a way to like make money or whatever just to survive, because, okay, if not, what is the other option? Kill myself? Yeah, whatever. So, while I'm doing that, what do I even have to prove to myself as well? Like, okay, like, because like this is what I think. Even if I like achieve something like super cool, in a way, at one point, I'm still going to be asking myself, okay, now what? Because life to me is, distractions and just, waiting to die, essentially. It's stupid and it's dumb and it's made up. And I keep going back to nihilism, because I've noticed that people can comfortably live their lives, unlike a lot of INTPs, when they realize that, oh, if they're just producing results in the real world, or if they're just like, going with the, I don't know, let's say like flow of like how things are, they don't have to think about how they think. And I think that's why INTPs naturally struggle with like, like their ENTJ shadow, because thinking all the time about how you think and make things work, truth be told, the universe does not care about like any of it. And the universe is essentially a fucking popularity contest where people are trying to do this, people are trying to do that. INTPs will not naturally care, I can imagine. A lot of us won't. Not to speak for all of you, but I know that a lot of us won't. And we can think of the world as just something super fake, and because we live in our minds, we know that this world is just something of like ideas. So I think at a lot of times, even if certain INTPs won't like fully admit that they're nihilistic like I am, I'm sure they they a lot of you guys struggle with like also thinking, okay, what's the point? Because the world is nothing more than how I can interpret it. We're always thinking about bias. We're always thinking about this. And I think that's why naturally INTPs, that's why naturally we're detached. Or if we're not detached, we're simply trying our best to be. But then also that can also be at a part where it's to our own detriment. We live in this paradox, because the blurry line of how we're supposed to activate and go in the world, and maybe there is a hidden part of us that could perhaps do that, the ENTJ in us that could assert authority, do this, do that. How, like, imagine how difficult it is to like just like balance, let's say, being somebody that's like always in here versus what happens when you're like doing things out here. Because to me, that's a blurry line. And talking again about like like trickster, like SE, the idea of me outside of how I think and view myself in here is just like so out of whack. Because like, even speaking specifically about like, let's say, physicality, I'm quite sure that I have dyspraxia. It's the only way I can explain people saying that like I run weird, or my body language is always kind of off or like strange or like something like that. Because like, yeah, truth be told, I am not in sync with my body. I'm in sync with my mind. Or of course I'm in sync with my body, quote unquote, in a way, I guess. Like, I'm glad I'm not a fucking cripple or some shit like that. But like, you know, I only feel like I am nothing other than my thoughts. How I processing. See, that's what I'm trying to say. We as INTPs, everything is about the conceptualization process. So it blows my fucking mind that I'm supposed to be intact, knowing that that's who I am, somebody that conceptualizes and prioritizes the way of thinking and going about things. Also, all the while simultaneously having to be stuck in a world where you can't focus too much on this, but you have to also make things happen as you sort of focus on this. I'm just like, what the fuck does that even mean? Yo, other INTPs, like, what does it mean, right? Like, what does that mean? Because what does it mean to mean even? Body and mind, I don't know. I'm just mind. I am nothing more and nothing less than my perspective. And I feel like as an INTP, I understand that more than like any other type. So, I don't know, like, I know a lot of society will like hypothetically like look down on us, and I know that like a lot of INTPs are, stereotyped as like, oh my gosh, not having potential, or well, not like not having potential, more like wasted potential. But I'm just like me personally, what do I care about impressing you? I'm surprised I got it this far to even like make fucking like YouTube videos. But I'm just like, see, why am I even talking about potential or like what makes somebody like, super cool and stuff like that? Because like naturally I don't care about that. Or at least like when I think of like FE, sure, I'm considering what most people think about things, how most people would want to like do things, but I'm just like, I cringe to think that I have to think about that. Because even if I am, I know that I am solely just focusing on other people and not how I really feel. Because from like the whole demon FI thing, there isn't really anything that I feel that personally. If anything, most feelings I have is this like discomfort of perhaps not knowing how I feel, because it's like a completely foreign language to something that like I'm trying to rationalize, but obviously I can't rationalize FI from a TI point of view. I don't know how to express myself to the point where, okay, because like this is how I've seen it, and I've had an INFP friend confirm this for me, but other FI DOMs, I don't know what you guys might say, but like, okay, he would say, I told him about how like, okay, so I guess it's less about like what's true, what makes sense, and it's more so about how like just your like expression itself, like showing who you are regardless of like whether the world will like accept it or not. I don't know what the fuck that means. I mean, I feel like I can conceptualize it, yeah, much like everything else. I can conceptualize it at best, but I'm not like that. Because when it comes to like logical consistency, I feel like I can't even make a step in the process of what I think unless I know that this actually connects together. And when I see FI DOMs, they're just like, oh, this is me, X, Y, and Z, and they just like go about it. They're just like, it's like a bomb that's like unapologetic. But like me as a TI person, I feel like to any person that I talk to, or if I talk to myself, it always has to be like, okay, this is what I discovered, and it led me to this. Even though I'm saying it led me to that, I don't feel anything personal to it, because I always think that when I try to solve something, when I try to like, make it make sense, it's me being like, placed in that direction. There's nothing to look for. It's like, okay, okay. And I think this is what naturally makes me stubborn, I guess, or like what might naturally make me like, shut down other people's ideas. And it could hypothetically be annoying to people that are so results oriented, like people that use strong TE, or I don't know, anything like that, people that like want to do shit, because I'm just like, they don't like my mind fuckery when they're like, oh my gosh, get your fucking philosophical mental masturbation away from me. And I'm just like, I'm really not necessarily trying to do it on purpose. I'm just like I don't know why it doesn't necessarily bother as many people compared to like how it does for me, as to like, okay, how do we know properly, quote unquote, even if it's just things that are personal to ourselves? Do we still really like know that? Because I think naturally as an INTP, what drains you out of life, at least like for me personally, is like, okay, you are succumbed to experience an existential crisis naturally more than like everyone else. And I feel like it's not even in the same way, because I know like more people might experience that because maybe they feel like they haven't, like, you know, they can't achieve their like emotional wellness from like my ti whole like detached thing. Even though I have my existential crisis, it can still always be there because there's truly nothing to fix. And I'm always reminded again that like an existential crisis is so stupid because I already know the made up conclusion. It's nihilism. You test the human, like, you know, human capability of understanding, limiting, and like reasoning. You just hit yourself with nihilism because the world is just empty. And yeah, to a lot of people, oh my gosh, that drains hope, that drains like whatever, because like, you know, they're weak and they're cowards. But I'm just like at a certain point where it's like I don't necessarily feel like I'm rotting. I'm just like, okay, who cares, you know, who cares? So when I think ENTJ and I think stereotypical ENTJ, like go getter person, make like, you know, goals and shit like happen, I'm just like how I am naturally as like an INTP. I'm just like, yeah, like I don't get it. I can still vibe with ENTJs hypothetically. I can hate ENTJs. I can hate any type, but I could probably still vibe with, you know, ENTJs anyway. But I'm just like, well, like, you know, there you go. Hopefully, if you are an ENTJ watching this, then it can even, let's say, help you see in a way what your own INTP shadow is like, because at least like this is how I experience it as an ENTJ. I can't imagine how much more comfortable it is for you because that's naturally the, you know, like your functions as an ENTJ are just like your natural ego like at play. So perhaps you, yeah, obviously you don't put it in the words that like I do, but I mean like, okay, there you go. Food for thought if any of you guys wanted to understand INTPs better in terms of like, you know, how we, or at least me, how I process the whole like ENTJ, let's say hidden part of me, like shadow sort of like part of me, or even if you're not an ENTJ, just anyone that was like curious in general. Okay, I made the video for you, so there you go.